Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's breakfast somewhere, so eat up. Welcome to Breakfast with Vinnie. Food for thought. Easy, take it easy. Okay, settle down, everybody. Settle down. Hey, today, welcome. Today's a special one for me. Once again, I have the great privilege of having as a special guest here on the show a dear old friend of mine who is also a mentor of mine and my teacher, my drum instructor at the Berklee School of Music. He's an esteemed instructor and performer, a real saint of the drums, a storehouse of knowledge, a prolific author who has pioneered the linear drumming system, among other things. He's performed with so many people. I remember when I was a student at Berkeley, he was playing then with Pat Metheny and Jaco Pastorius, and I was dumbfounded, and equally dumbfounded when he accepted me as a student, a mere student, and I saw what it was that he was doing. He was very, very much responsible for shaping me as a drummer and as a musician. Today, please welcome Gary Chaffee. Gary, welcome to Breakfast with Vinnie.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this, just to, continue what you were saying. Vinnie and I have known each other for a long time in various combinations. And I've always considered him to be one of the greatest students I ever had. And he said something in his little intro there, where he was talking about when he first saw me, and I forget what exactly you said to me, but it was something like, I got what he was doing, or I was, something like that, because it was obvious that he knew the things that I was talking about. So, Vinnie, I have a question for you. That's okay.
Certainly.
Who did you study with before me? Because I can't imagine you were already that rhythmically proficient when I ran into you. But maybe you were. Maybe you did it yourself.
Well, okay. I mean, I came from my little rural southwestern Pennsylvania area, and I studied a lot. I mean, I was really, really geeky and into studying. So I studied with a lot of different people. There was a local guy in Pennsylvania that in my little town that a lot of us drummers went to. His name was Jim Crockett, and he was really into Wilcoxon and rudiments and
yeah.
And I was modeling myself after the people of the day, Frank Arsenault, and these people that were rudimental drummers and would practice in front of the mirror and had one of the tick-tock wind-up metronomes and marched in the band and practiced incessantly, was in the stage band. And at that time, we had a very good music program. And there were people involved, the band director, and then their sort of assistant band directors and arrangers. There were real jazz heads, and so one of them said, "Oh, this kid's talented. I'm going to mentor him." And, he goes, "I want you to study with this guy at Carnegie Mellon. I'm going to take you down to meet this guy. His name's Joey Chinaki. He'll teach you how to be a good big band drummer. He's actually a voice major, but he's a great drummer." And, I went to Carnegie Mellon. Then I went to these, what they were called fine arts music camps, 3 years in a row at West Virginia University when I was in junior high school. And each time I went there, I got college credit. So I had 3 semesters worth of credit at WVU in Morgantown. And at that time, the percussion teacher was a guy called Phil Faini, who then later became the dean of the school. And Phil took a sabbatical and came back after 2 years, and he had all these African percussion instruments. So he was teaching us African percussion, like microtonal xylophones. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of a hemiola. you know. And so I was studying and with these different people, and I bought all these drum books and was sort of really just immersing myself in getting as much information as I could, cerebral information, theoretical knowledge, reading, music notation. And I got exposed to, some various rhythmic elements from also at that time, when I was in junior high, I was listening to, the Mothers of Invention and Frank Zappa and, just taking all of that in. But then I discovered this piece called ionization.
Yeah.
And when I heard ionization, my eyes lit up and I thought, I want to know what all this stuff is. So I started absorbing.
I knew there was something.
Right.
Because when you came, you were just so much different. So I knew there had to be a spark someplace along the way where you went talking about ionization. Do you know how many people between you and me know even what that piece is or who wrote it or what it's about? But it made a big impression. And I knew it had to be something like that. I didn't really have that myself. I never got any kind of specific knowledge or training rhythmically. It was all the same shit. It was rudiments. It was the Wilcoxon book, the Dennard book. That's the stuff that
Sure.
I learned.
Yeah. So, well, I'm going to ask you then. You just gave me a springboard, but I'm going to finish me. I'm almost done with me since you asked me. But I did the same things with Anthony Cerrone, all these things, reading books, and I just immersed myself. And then I started looking for other things that had those kinds of rhythmic things. Pete Magadini. I got exposed to Pete Magadini, and that got me off and running as well. So by the time I got to Berkeley, I already had, I had amassed some knowledge, some rhythmic knowledge and ability. So I was sort of prepared in a way that I already, I just wanted to develop it and kind of just expand and be around people, playing different kinds of music and just expand myself. But the question is that if you didn't have anywhere that you got it from, how the hell did you develop all that stuff?
I got it in orchestral music. When I went to Potsdam, went to college and played in an orchestra, they played a lot of contemporary music. And I remember going to my percussion ensemble teacher, and we were playing a piece called Amores. And who was it by? I forget, sorry. But anyways, it had two movements of prepared piano. Now, I never heard of prepared piano before. It was so cool. And then the second and the third movements were for percussion quartet. So the very first quartet, within 3 or 4 measures, there were 11s and 7s and 5s. And I had no idea. So I went to my teacher and I said, I have no idea how to play this, how to count it. He didn't have much of an idea either. But I think together, the two of us kind of figured out, things that would work to be able to do it. And I just fell in love with it. And I kept wanting to find more of that stuff. So yeah, there were some books around that had, some of that in, but not really that much. Vinnie, and by the way, one thing that we never did together, there is one incredibly difficult rhythmic piece. I don't know if you know it. It's called Knocking Piece by Ben Johnston. It is the hardest rhythmic piece ever written. So anyways, it's the thing about it, you're playing inside a piano, 2 guys with mallets, and every measure is a metric modulation. So you're overlapping. You modulate the first measure. I do it the second measure, but it's always different. It's coming off different rhythms. I spent a month with a guy and we barely got through the first page. It's 15 pages long. So if
Oh,
you ever have a chance, just look it up, Knocking Piece. I think there's maybe a couple of versions of it on the internet.
so you were going to say, if there's a chance. So one thing we never got to do together. So the question is, how could we do this, right?
Oh, I couldn't play it. I'm way.
Oh, sure you could.
No, no, no. You don't know the piece. I do.
Okay.
Anyways, I know that you could do it. And so you're going to have to find somebody else to do it with. But I'm saying if you want a really interesting, unbelievable piece, I mean, it's, it's not a lot of different sounds. It's just inside the piano. It's just playing with mallets. So there's not a whole lot of dynamics. I don't remember if there are any dynamics written in it, but that's a piece you want to check out.
Okay. I love the fact that if it doesn't sound like there's a metric modulation every bar, that the listener is blissfully unaware of it, while the performers are basically, chewing their nails to the bone,
Right. That's the way that shit works,
I know. Right.
So hard, and people in the audience are saying, "Oh,
yeah, I could do that." What was that? Was nothing. But what they don't realize was how it was conceived. That's a great example and exercise of just perception. You know what I mean? It really is. That's kind of a mind-numbing thing. So you had to figure it out for yourself, and so by the time you started teaching at Berkeley, because I remember when I got there, and it was 74, 75, you had basically prepared the entire curriculum for the school, and
right.
and your methodology was nascent then. It was in its infancy. It was, loose leaf. It wasn't even in book form yet. And so, I was sort of like one of the guinea pigs, many of us, because we were on the ground floor of that stuff. And here we are being exposed to this. And I'm thinking, what's that? That's.
Well, do you remember the time that I took you to Ed Kaspik's office? You had come in and I had told you the week before, because you obviously knew about this. I said, come back with a couple of pieces that demonstrate how you think about this stuff.
I wrote some stuff, for you.
Came back with some very hard rhythmic pieces. He said, oh, this one goes something like this. And then, oh, well, this other one goes something like this. And so I couldn't believe it. So I said, wait a minute. We walked over to Ed Kaspik, who is the strongest rhythmicist I ever met. And I said, Ed, you're not going to believe this. And then you showed him the pieces and then you played it. And he flipped out too. It was very interesting that you had attained that kind of level at that age.
Yeah, I think, well, thank you. I mean, to me, it was just it just kind of came out, and it was just part of how I thought. And,
that's the only way it could have happened.
In the imagination, yeah, I guess just the way that I thought and the kind of imagination that I had. And so nobody was telling me, well, you can't do this or write this, because, nobody stifled me. I just sort of could let my imagination run wild, and just be yourself. You know what I mean? And you always fostered that, and just sort of gave me the stuff to do, and I'd come in, and you had defended me. Some I remember I came into, once you said something that blew my mind, and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn by any means, believe me, but I came into a lesson. And, you put something in front of me, and it was a lesson that was, I should have prepared from the week before. And so I sat down and played it. And so there was another student in the room, and I sat down and played, and I made one mistake. And the guy said, oh, maybe you should have practiced it. And you turned around and said to him, Vinnie doesn't need to practice. And I was like, wow.
That sounds right.
Pardon? I just remember that, and you ran to my defense. So, I mean, thanks for doing that. I mean, not that I would encourage any teacher to give a student a pass for not practicing, but I guess you were trying to tell him that, don't be so quick to judge. And yeah, I mean, if it were me and I were in that guy's shoes, I probably would have taken that lesson. So, but
To be honest with you, Vinny, I didn't think you hardly ever practiced for the lesson. I thought you were just coming in and winging it because I knew you could, because the material was not beyond you. It was right in your breadbasket. That was what was unusual. There were other guys. Kenwood is a good example. Dennard, of a guy that had a very strong, rhythmic thing. So there were a few guys around
absolutely
that were doing that.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to just talk about you and me, so
yeah, absolutely.
else.
And we used to practice together. We were on this, I think we were on the same dorm floor. Kenwood and I used to hang out and just play on the pad or whatever. And a lot of us did that. I mean, there were a lot of people at that time in school during those years. It was pretty amazing when I think about it. Steve Smith was there. Remember, there was a small period of time there that we took lessons together with you, and John Robinson was there, and Kenwood was there, and Mike Stern
that was the group.
Yeah.
That was the group. You guys had a separate lesson, I think, in addition to your regular lesson, or maybe two of these groupy things.
Yeah.
Where one group would be one day about something and the other one would be about something else.
Mm-hmm.
It might be stickings, one day it might be polyrhythms. And so I got more time with you. That was the whole reason I did it, But it was, those guys, they were interesting people to work. I remember Steve Smith once, I don't know who he said it to, but he said, yeah, you come out of Gary's lessons and you have a headache. And that's probably right for a lot of people.
That's funny, but it's true, because that was no easy stuff. And I mean, I'm seeing this for the first time. And so you had then, after that, compiled it into a system, and which was brilliant. And so, I mean, but there was a lot of stuff happening at that time. I remember we used to listen to, Tower of Power and Garibaldi, and all of this stuff was new then. And and the first time I'd heard about reggae was from you, I remember, and just a lot of stuff. And then towards the end of my time there, the last bit of lessons that we had together, we would just, I remember walking in there and you just put Tony on the turntable and just sit there and listen to Miles. And, you covered the gamut of like, okay, this is what we're going to do today. And you're in, and it was teaching me about concept and how important concept was. And I remember saying to you, yeah, I want to come back, be a composition major and continue that, but I ran out of money. And you said, man, just move to New York, go to New York, get out of here. So, I tried and I ended up going to LA, but that the stuff was just so valuable to me. And so when I'm not sure how did that whole concept of linear drumming become birthed to you? What is it that, was there some sort of spark that said, look, this is, you know what I mean? As opposed to harmonic playing, so to speak. Like what was it that inspired you to sort of, what came to you first?
I can tell you because it's a very direct line, but it connects into the other two things of my system. Basically was about rhythms, about stickings, and the result of putting rhythms and stickings together. That was the biggest thing. When I came out of college, I had seen a lot of rhythm stuff. Magadini's book was out. there was another book called Rhythms of Contemporary Music. I remember I worked on it. There were a few other books out. And I just saw that there was room for more stuff. And the thing I think that was different about my book was that it was basically pieces. It wasn't exercises, it was pieces. And you had to have good dynamic control. You had to have very good switching between rhythms control. It wasn't just about playing rhythms. It was about doing something with them. And so as I did that, the one thing that was bothering me with the sticking system was there was no bass drum. I hadn't gotten the bass drum in. I used the bass drum under the stickings, as we all do, but I hadn't figured out any way to get it inside a sticking. And then I realized there was no way. Because if you're playing a 3-note sticking and you stick a bass drum in place of the second note, then you got a single and a double. And that's not the sticking. That doesn't give the sound of the sticking. It's something else. So I couldn't figure out any way to get the bass drum in. So then I said, okay, well, I'll just use single strokes, 2 through 8 groupings, and the whole concept is about putting them together, mixing them. So if you take a 3 and a 5, you can make a 2-beat phrase. You can make a 16-measure phrase. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
And phrasing is not a lot of drummers' strong suit. So it was kind of a simple way to show guys how you could take a simple phrase and expand it. Plus, at some point along there, I ran into tablas, and I started practicing tablas for a while. I studied them for about 5 years, really hard. And then my teacher said, if you ever really want to get this, you're going to have to move to India for some years. And I couldn't do it. I had a family, I had a job here. And I didn't want to, just screw around with them. Like a lot of guys, when I was at Berkeley, I hired a tabla teacher, a good one. He's the guy I eventually studied with, to give classes. And so it was in the beginning, it was about 20 students. By a month and a half, it was 7 students. By 6 months, it was 2 students, me and one of my friends. Because to them, it was just like a little something different. I saw one of these guys play tablas on a gig. He thought he knew something, so he was playing just a couple of strokes and thinking like, oh, this is great, man. Where to me, I was saying, man, you're not giving the instrument any credit. You're treating it like a fucking drum, like a snare drum or something. Just hit it and it'll work. So that's where the linear system came from. And then it was, which way do I want to go? Do you want to do it with all the various combinations between the stickings, which is kind of what I, chose, because it gave the most phrasing possibilities. So that's where, in the first book that I presented it, which is the time functioning book, I didn't know a lot of stuff. I really didn't. So it's very brief there. Then later you get a whole book on it, and that's much broader. Plus it brings in a different kind of linear than I used in the first book.
Yeah. Well, the idea that you concentrated on phrasing and sort of, somehow embedded the idea of phrasing into the drummer's head, maybe without them even knowing it, is pretty brilliant. Because I think that even now, it's. I mean, dare I say it's an overlooked thing, and I say dare I say because I listen and I'm listening sometimes for I don't know why. I couldn't tell you what the reason is. I'm listening, and then I'll start listening for phrases And I think it's because on some level, I'm realizing that I'm not hearing them.
Yeah.
And so then I start looking for something that I don't feel like I'm getting. Like, you get used to eating a certain meal and you go, what happened to the chili pepper? They didn't put it in there, you know what I mean? So you start adding it and I'm thinking like, where did that go? What happened to phrasing? What happened to, like, you would hear people back in the old, I don't know, bebop and post bop days that like it was all about phrasing. And not only was it about phrasing, but it was actually about building phrases and into a composition. If they soloed, I mean, like there's a great black and white video that I've seen. You can see it on YouTube of Frankie Dunlop. Man,
Wow.
of underrated, holy mackerel, in my opinion, playing, and he's playing in just a slow tempo, and he's playing a solo on Blue Monk. And it's like probably, it might be some of the most important 16 bars that I've ever heard, because what he does, and he's doing it at a slow tempo, and then you hear the phrases and how he builds the phrases. It's a masterclass in phrasing and composing by building phrases, and slow too, not up tempo and I'm just gonna fly here I go, watch me, watch this. No, try doing it at like 50 or something. You know what I mean? Try that on for size, and and then call me up and let me know how that goes. So
well, the thing is that I don't really hear any music out there. I don't listen that much to music because I hate almost everything that I hear. But most of the music, when I do listen to it, the phrases are, if anything, they're getting shorter. I hear whole tunes that are 2-beat repetitive phrases. They don't have any harmonic movement most of the time because it's not about that. It's it's just about presenting the words in the song, and so I don't hear, if you go back and look in the 40s, there are hundreds of tunes with words or without words that have 8-measure phrases and have larger forms like 32 measures. You don't hear a 32 measure tune anymore. You don't hear an 8-measure tune anymore. So I feel sorry for the guys because that gives you some room to maneuver instead of just playing your 2-beat thing over and over again. If you had more space, you could do more stuff. Not a lot of stuff, but some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a tune from like Fascinating Rhythm. You know, I mean, we can name dozens of tunes from that era or from spanning several decades, but I know exactly what you mean. It's crazy. It's like repetitive, a couple of things that, and then maybe it gets built on. And the thing about it is that the protocol and the rules have changed whereby some things have been eliminated that I think are vital. The harmonic language and melodic language,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And forget about the rhythm stuff. I mean, that's a can of worms that I'm not even going to open here, but just the song forms. And I can identify people that have taken these forms, these reduced forms, and done pretty cool things with them, but that doesn't justify reducing the form to me. And because I can also, cite dozens of other that have taken that kind of new reduced form and it's just garbage, So, and really most of it that I think gets pumped down the mainstream is just homogenized sort of garbage. And not to mention that what it's dressed in is pretty vile. And that if you're going to normalize that kind of stuff, I don't think it bodes well for society, and I don't think that, people should say, well, that's just, we're products of our society in order to belch that garbage out. If you're
Yeah.
going to be a role model as a musician, don't give me that bullshit. Don't tell me, hey, I'm a product of my society, therefore baloney. Like, it's just, and meanwhile, good art is clamoring to be heard. And at the same time, I mean, it's almost like the same old song, really. But at the same time, there's so much talent out there, more than ever, probably. And, the level keeps getting raised. Yet at the same time, there's so much mindless pap that's just being propagated to the masses. It's just almost a hilarious paradox, So, but if we talk about this stuff and it gets to people, hey, great,
Yeah, it's
be
so funny
heard.
because of my affiliation with Mick Goodrick, one of the greatest guitar players that I ever heard or had the opportunity to play with.
Hmm.
I did so many duos. I did Mick and John Abercrombie. I did Mick and Wolfgang Neuspiel. I did Wolfgang Neuspiel and another guy. In other words, I heard all of these different guitar players, top of the line. None of them played the same. They all had their own sound, their own style, their own way of phrasing. It was. I've in the last 6 months or so, I've been going back through all my old stuff, old recordings of gigs and stuff. And one of the things I realized was how little I was paying attention to what was going on. I don't know what I was thinking about. I really don't, because now when I listen and I listen to what the soloists are doing, that's not what I was hearing. I don't know what I was hearing, but it wasn't that. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know what the answer is,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, one of the puzzles.
Really? So in retrospect, you're wondering what you were thinking because you didn't think that you were listening well enough? Is that, what am I getting here?
No, it was on a different level. It was in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, I'm not saying that I wasn't interacting. Of course, I was interacting. I was pretty much an aggressive drummer in a small group. So I would get in there and mix it up with them all the time. I did not lay back. I did
Mm-hmm.
not just play time.
Mm-hmm.
That was, just my style.
Yeah.
And so when I listened to like the guitar players, going back to them and how they phrased, and it wasn't exactly the way that I was phrasing, but I did incorporate a lot of things that I heard them doing first, like where they would put their cadences. Because when you move your cadences around, as you know, on top of the form, so you don't cadence on one at the end of the 8-measure phrase, you cadence on 2 of the 3rd measure. And what that does is it loops the time. So you're seeing like the canvas has the same form all the time, but every time you go back and draw something over it, it comes out differently. It's never the same.
Profoundly said. Yeah, I understand now.
Yeah.
Tell me about playing with Pat Metheny and Jaco together.
We only played 1 or 2 gigs.
Yeah, I thought it was more than that.
No. And Jaco actually, I think he stayed at my house. Yeah, because he was broke back then.
Mm-hmm.
And he went in to Berkeley. I don't know if you were there when this was happening.
I was. In fact, that's the first time I saw Jaco. He just busted into one of our lessons.
I was there.
Barged right in.
I mean, but he did that in other, with other teachers and stuff. He'd just go in and start taking over.
It was funny.
It definitely was funny.
Yeah.
But he had a very unique sense of musical time.
Mm-hmm.
It's very obvious, and it wasn't just the rhythms, but it was the notes, the pitches, the articulation, the phrasing. It had a whole lot of things to do. But players like that really always inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
Pat, I had already been working with. He had a little, I forget if it was a quartet or a quintet. We played a few things, but Jaco wasn't around that much.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't read. Oh, I remember a lot of it was with a bass player named Barry Smith. I don't know if you ever played with him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that group was very short-lived.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't have a big effect.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. I just remembered that when I was studying with you that you were playing around town. I think you were playing as a Zircon, I think, with those guys. Something.
Zircon, probably 1369.
Yeah, those clubs.
Wiles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought there was a lot more of that going on. So quickly, before I get into this next thing I want to ask you, let's go back to this idea of cadences again. In a group improvisational context. When you talk about that and resolving over the bar or several bars, are you saying that you may be predicating that on what's happening collectively at the moment, or that you may just decide to do that arbitrarily, just because it feels right at the moment?
Yes, it's more of the latter. But the thing that happens, this is not, you can't, if you're playing with a piano player that's going to pound out the and a 4 or 1 or something like that, you can do this, but it's just going to, not work unless the other guys in the band understand what's going on. So when I do that cadencing stuff, either other guys will pick up on it and do their own thing regarding that. They won't put it in the same place because they don't know where the place is going to be that I'm going to put it. So you can have a band where guys are cadencing at different places, but then every now and then you'll all come together. It might take 5 choruses to do it.
Right.
That's the big time. And then
that could be said that that's part of the fun of it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And but if they don't know what's going on, it's probably because they can't recognize your cadences because they're not seeing how you're leading up to it, using phrases to elongate the cadence or put it wherever you want to put it. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, let me give you some examples, like Jimmy Cobb.
Yeah.
Great drummer. Where did he cadence? On the 4 of 1 of the measure after the downbeat. That was his main cadence. Sometimes he would do it on the 4 of the next measure too.
Okay.
So wow. I heard that and I said, well, geez, man, that's kind of cool. So I started picking it up because I was hearing other guys do that kind of stuff. It wasn't something that I dreamed up on my own, but it seemed like a really good idea to move it around to make the form a little bit more elastic.
Sure.
You can't do this on a rock tube. Sorry. You just can't.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about something in jazz you can do a lot. In Latin, you can do some, although that's also very beat oriented, a lot of it. So you have to be careful not to get in the way of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Great. That was, thank you. I mean, just, you know, that Jimmy Cobb example was a big light bulb that is easy for many to grasp
Yeah.
on that level. So so Gary, I gotta ask you this. Do you, how do you feel about the idea of what linear drumming meant to you when you conceived of it, um, and what it's become now? That's just,
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
it's a hot button, and
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No. I didn't even realize what it had become because I never listened to that kind of music until a couple guys said, "Hey, you know what these guys are playing?
Mhm.
They're just playing linear phrases really fast, over some stupid beat." So I really wasn't aware of that. I saw it originally as a soloing device.
Real quick, Gary, your head is at the bottom of the phrase. Frame
Sorry.
rather. That's better.
Okay.
So you saw it. You're saying you originally saw it as a soloing device?
Yeah. If you're trading fours or something, it's a way to play phrases.
Right.
And that was, so the two things, kind of connected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I also remember you illustrating how just doing it inside of grooves as well, like
Yeah.
time shuffles and, you know, footing the hi-hat and breaking up the sticking so that you could play these linear grooves as well. But so as a soloing device, it was meant to be able to sort of uh
It
bring
gave,
out phrases. So
yeah.
okay, but you know, I mean, I was on the ground floor of this with you because you sort of, we were probably some of the first people that were exposed to this stuff. You know,
Mhm.
that whole that
Sure.
time period at Berkeley. You know, me and Steve and Kenwood, we were, and so some of us kind of took it and ran with it a bit, and you know, maybe have to share the burden of that guilt. But you know, a monster has been created.
Yes.
But at the same time, you know, I just wonder if it unlocked a key to enable people to sort of orchestrate freely around the kit, seeing that it makes it easy to play certain phrases that sound hip because of the stickings that they're able to do, and kind of unlocked a door, or if it's something that's kind of been diluted into some
Yeah.
homogenized thing, or
Yeah. Yeah. But
maybe
that's,
a little bit of both. I don't know.
well, it's really true. I mean, when you talk about using a linear phrase to play time, you're not going to be playing the notes flat. You're going to be putting in accents or maybe open hi-hats or 30-second notes. There's all kinds of little modifiers that you can do, to enhance it. So it's not always going to be the same. It's not a beat, it's a feel. And I think that's the big difference. There's a linear feel.
Wow. Light bulb number two. Okay. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge, and it's not just a semantic difference. It's an actual difference. It's a
Yes.
conceptual difference that makes a difference in reality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wow, that's, yeah. And if you think of it that way, then that's the way it, yeah. You're on the right track. You're on the right path. It is a feel. It's not a beat. It's a feel.
Yeah, I mean, you can make beats out of linear,
Right.
but you can make beats out of anything.
Yeah.
It's not really its main purpose, although in a certain style of music, it's good. I mean, you're not going to play jazz time with stickings. I'm not going to, at least, and I'm not going to play it with linear either. I mean, you could fake a version of linear, inside jazz time, but it would really be very, very limited. It would be way too notey. You don't want to play that many notes when you're playing jazz time, like on the snare drum or the other drums. There's got to be some space in there. So
Mhm.
linear wouldn't really be good for that. So it has some uses, but not others. But
Mhm.
yes, the bastardization, using it to play incredibly fast notes around the drums, an endless. I really, I don't know why people get into those things. I had a friend over today because my studio here, I used to have a couple of drum sets and stuff, but I've given most of my equipment away because I don't use it anymore. There was an electronic drum set here that I bought for my grandkids many years ago.
Mhm.
And one took it for a while and gave up, and the next one took it for a while and gave up, and it's just been sitting in the corner. So I finally decided to try it. I always hated electronic drums. I was dead set against them, but I'm almost 80 years old. And believe me, setting up an electronic drum set is a lot easier than setting up a real drum set. So I don't have to get out my stands and do all that stuff. It's very self-contained. I can carry it around. And I'm not interested in doing anything but actually just using. I felt I was losing certain control in my body that came from drumming, that the kinds of moves and things that you do, they develop certain aspects of your physical body. No question about it. So I just gave up, and then I could just feel something was slipping away. So even though I hate to play on electronic drums, I'm playing on them now just so I can physically sit there and move my feet and play broken time and move around a little bit. It feels pretty good right now. Doesn't sound great, but feels good.
Oh, come on. Well, no, but that's good. They definitely will help. It's
Yeah,
it's it's helping you in some way, and
yeah,
that's important. And
yeah,
for me, I mean, yeah, I years ago, 20 years ago, I just thought I'm not going to play these things. I hated the way they felt. I didn't
hmm
like the way the mesh heads felt then,
hmm
and I didn't think that they had arrived. And then suddenly, a few years ago, I had, I got invited, and so I went and I checked these things out, and I went, "Holy cow, big difference!" And then I was talking to the people at Roland, and I said, "What did you guys do?" And they were telling me, and they just they really got it down now, and to the point
yeah,
where, yeah, and they sound really good, and you could record discrete tracks with them, and yeah, I mean, put headphones on, and if I was recording something, there could be somebody out the window with a lawnmower, and it's not going to interrupt me. I who cares? The dog can bark all he wants.
yeah,
And I can get something out of it. So I hear you on that. I think now it's, but again, there's the acoustic drums have an unparalleled kind of feel and requirement and a
right.
skill set that and it's very immediate and very primal and beautiful, and it's just, I think now we have an adjunct, a
Yeah,
good adjunct that's
yeah.
uh,
I can play them without hating them now.
yeah, they're
Because
viable.
they're doing something for me. They're allowing me to do something that I want to do that I can't do with a real drum set anymore. So it's working out, kind of.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's fantastic.
I don't. It's not a fancy set. I think it's a very basic set. The sounds are pretty limited. The tracks are. Some of them are just downright stupid. I mean, stupid sounds, and I don't get it at all. But I'm old, so I don't
No,
care.
don't say that. No, no, no.
But there are two jazz channels. One is, it just says jazz, but it's like big band jazz drum sound. And one says bebop, and that sounds a little bit more like a smaller set, which is what I wanted. So,
Right.
and it's not great, but it's good enough. I'm going to go over there for 20 minutes a day. It's a big deal, you know?
Yeah, right, of course. And you can laugh at it, like the fact that it sounds like something on one of those organs, you know, like, you know, or you put the track on and it's funny. Yeah. So that's really, really funny. So um I was going to ask you, um, just one more thing, Gary. I mean, we could go nuts here, but I know you don't want to bogart all your time. But how do you feel about the fact that there's an instant glut of information available constantly and rehashed over and over and over online that basically hands people information on a platter, which causes them to absorb information, you know, at an exponentially faster rate, or it's just more available to them, and how that is sort of becoming the way that people are learning now versus, you know, I mean, when I was in school, it was like, well, we had record players and tape machines, and then we'd go out and see people live and try to take it in and see how much we absorbed, you know, or remember.
Sessions, we had sessions.
Well, yeah, we had sessions, but ways to learn and sort of integrate. I think, you know, back then, I think that I had to use my imagination a lot more. You know, whatever I could grasp by hearing things that influenced me at the time, once it was over, it was over. And then I would try to figure out what it was that I just heard versus being able to hear it constantly over and over and over now, and then copy it and, you know, maybe never achieving my own voice. Just, oh, I can do that now. I learned it, and oh, it's available to me. And yeah, well, you know, it reminds me of the Matrix. It's like, okay, kung fu, you know, okay, now acrobatics, okay, classical violin, you know, it's just, you know what I mean? It sounds like a great idea and idyllic in a lot of ways, but I just wonder if it allows for the sort of gradual development of the person.
I think you already know the answer is no, man. It doesn't. And there's nothing you can or I can do about it. That's just, you know, the way it is. I mean, think about me. I was talking with Steve and Houghton about this. I said, you know, we were born at the perfect time for getting into jazz because we were coming up in the 50s, early 60s. We were all going to school. Miles is coming out. You know, Elvin is coming out. Train is coming out. All these great bands and clubs all over the place that had jazz groups. You go to New York, you could go to 5 different clubs in one night and see all kinds of players, you know. It was really a visceral kind of musical experience. And the one thing that you notice, that I notice, is every drummer played different. I remember seeing Joe Chambers, and he didn't have a rack ton. All he had was a snare drum and I said, wow, that's kind of weird. And then I thought about it for a minute, and I said, no, it's not. It's fine.
Exactly.
He wants these sounds. He doesn't need that other sound, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the last set that I wound up playing was that I used on the last couple of clinics was a bass drum, a snare drum, a tambourine that I got from Frank's Drum Shop in Chicago, made by a guy called Clarence, who used to be in the back room. I don't know if you were ever there, but he made these great tambourines. And I used it on the set. I got more compliments on that thing. I did one PAS festival. There were about 500 people in the audience. And after I played, the first question that came out what do you have on the right side of your set? It sounds great, but we can't see any drums,
Oh, that's wow.
you know? Yeah, if it was mic'd right, it just had a very, because it's a calfskin head, you know, all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So that was my set. No toms, just the tambourine, two cymbals, no waiting.
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing, man. I mean, you saw a lot of that back then too. People doing that now too, where they're, you know, changing up setups and this, that, and the other thing. And yeah, I see that happening now as well. But nothing. It just is. And so what's next for you? If you're retired, do you ever think about an encore in any way?
No, absolutely not in any way, shape, or form. No books, no articles, no nothing. I'm done. I said what I had to say. When I look back at my materials, the main thing to me is not the rhythms. It's the stickings with the rhythms. That combination. And because it leads to everything. It leads to time fills, it leads to soloing, it leads to all kinds of things. And you can incorporate all the other musical issues like dynamics and so forth. The linear thing, as you know now, was just a way of involving the bass drum primarily when you're playing on the set. And that could go either way for time fills or solo. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the main thing that I brought to the party.
Well, it's an amazing thing. I mean, innovative, and so you've left your legacy. So yeah, bravo. You know, bravo, Gary. I mean, you've left us all with this rich legacy that has informed and taught so many of us, that has then gone into the drumming vocabulary of the entire drumming community and seeped into music. And there you go. You know?
Yeah, I think some of it has become part of the overall picture of playing.
Unquestionably, more than just a little.
I see. I don't really know, because
I hear it.
How I would know.
I mean, I hear it, and whether or not I'm hearing an adulterated version of it is different, because we spoke about phrases and all that a little earlier.
Yeah.
But it made its way in and definitely made a huge dent. So, you know, you just have to see where it evolves. You put it out there and you just let it go, and we'll see what it's going to become, I suppose, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the next things are going to be that are going to be happening in drumming, because I'm so far removed from it, and I don't hear any music that allows for any really interesting stuff that be happening on the drums. The drums are just one of the workhorses in most tunes. They just, you know, they're the steel workers. They just lay out the stuff and other people drive over it, you know?
That's a great way of putting it. Well, with that, I'm going to close out this now and say thank you, Gary. Just thank you for doing this and for coming on the show, and thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode of Breakfast with Vinnie.